Welcome back. This morning, we're shining a spotlight on the movie set shooting that took the life of cinematographer Halyna Hutchins. She was killed after a live round was put into a prop gun and handed to actor Alec Baldwin and fired while pointed directly at Hutchins.
I take the coat over the thing, I said the camera's there. I believe, my recollection is she was there, turned a bit, like talking to him. So I think she was hit in the right armpit. But this is all I know, and that is that I take the gun out in the rehearsal. Really, he wanted very dramatic and very slick. I'm trying to sneak up on them. I take the gun out, and as I take, as it clears, as the barrel clears the hole, turn and cock the gun over here. I turn and cock the gun goes off. It's supposed to be a cold gun. Nothing. No flash charges, nothing.
This is really, really sad stuff. What deficiencies were on this set? How did this happen? We have two great guests joining us now to talk about it. Prop master and armorer Dutch Merrick is with us, and entertainment reporter Kinsey Schofield. Welcome to you both. Dutch, I'd like to begin with you, please. Analyzing this situation, you have done that many times and for quite some time. Talk to us, please, about the biggest things that are jumping out at you that were reckless or negligent on this movie set.
Well, it clearly was not a single point of failure. It was a cascade of events. There were several events that all had to happen for this to take place. And when I talk to everyone in Hollywood, the one thing everyone wants to know is, where did the bullet come from? Like, let's go back to the very source. Where did a live cartridge show up on a film set for the first time in recorded history? And that's what the prosecutor's not pursuing. Sure, there's a problem with Alec Baldwin pointing a gun at people. Sure, there's a problem. Maybe he had his finger on the trigger. And Hannah Gutierrez Reed was way in over her head. She was hired to do a job she was inexperienced for. I think she was unqualified for. But where did the bullet come from? And of course, all that is nurtured by a culture of haste and cutting corners that was created by the producers. So there's several factors involved with this.
Right, definitely, Dutch. And, you know, interestingly, the state has not joined Hannah Gutierrez Reed and Alec Baldwin as co-defendants here. There are separate trials happening. Hers is going now. They start picking the jury today, and then his will be going at a later date. His attorney's still fighting really hard for dismissal. I've got a clip here, and Kinsey, I'd like to come to you on the other side. This is where he's being interviewed by police. This is being done by phone right after the shooting.
What sickens me the most is she was guiding me through the very motions that wound up costing her her life.
But they never tell you guys to keep your finger off the trigger.
Well, yeah, you know, I never have my finger on the trigger. Never. I never cocked the gun, and I never cocked the gun all the way and pulled the trigger to advance the hammer, because I was told that could. It's a subtle process, but I was always told years ago that could damage the gun.
Kinsey, with respect to Alec Baldwin, in Hollywood, is there more support for him than there is for Hannah Gutierrez?
I mean, that's a good question. There have been some people that have spoken out, like George Clooney, that said, never on my watch has anything like this ever happened. But I do believe that there were rumors leading up to this incident about the Rust set being not a secure space. And, you know, there were people that were walking off, production staff members that were walking off of the Rust set because they were concerned for their safety. Prior to this incident, you know, 10 days before the shooting, they had reached back out to a previous individual that they'd asked to be the armorer and to be the prop master, and said, hey, are you available? Could you come back? We're concerned about the direction that this is heading with the individual that we did hire. And those rumors did make their way to Hollywood, and people were shocked by them. So I do believe there is more sympathy towards Alec Baldwin when it comes to this specific case, because there were these rumors that were circulating prior to this event that happened.
Right, Kinsey. I've got another clip here, and Dutch, I'd like to come to you on the other side of this one. This is Hannah Gutierrez in a police interview after the shooting, and she's talking about how she loaded that firearm with dummy rounds, and she tells police about the last time she was sure she loaded it prior to the shooting.
So when was the last time you loaded it?
I loaded it so I loaded it with 5 of the dummy rounds before lunch, and there was one that wouldn't go in. And so when we got back from lunch, I took the little cleaner guy, I cleaned it out really quick, and I put another dummy in there.
And it still doesn't answer how the live rounds were put in that gun. Dutch, your thoughts on this? The fact that she wasn't even the one who handed the prop gun to Alec Baldwin. We know that the assistant director, Dave Halls, was the one who did it. I remember you telling us way back when this happened that is absolutely against protocol. That should never have happened. And yet it did. And yet he's also getting a deal to testify in this one. Talk to me, please, here about what you think could have occurred from the time she's saying she loaded it with dummies into the time Dave Halls gave it to Alec Baldwin.
Well, the two biggest failures I see of this entire case was one was on set when Dave Halls, the first assistant director, took the gun from the armorer and he sat in as a stand-in in front of the camera. Then he calls in Alec Baldwin with no armorer present, and he hands her a gun that he hasn't thoroughly checked. Never, ever, ever should a first AD insert themselves in that process between a gun handler or prop person and the actor. It's really unheard of. And the second big failing is after the incident is why hasn't the prosecution investigated Seth Kenney, who seems to have provided the dummies and the blanks and live cartridges mixed in. Those to me are the two smoking guns, if you will, is why Dave Halls inserted himself in that really important process of managing that gun out of haste. Undoubtedly, he had the armor out of the room. And then why hasn't the prosecutor even asked Seth Kenney? They should have asked the ATF about his record in Hollywood, why he's a persona non grata in Los Angeles. He was pushed out of Hollywood for bad behavior, and he's out in the desert possibly causing this horrible incident.
Oh, my. And Dutch, would you remind us, because that's a name, we at Court TV haven't heard that name. What was his role on the set again, please?
So Seth Kenney owns PDQ Arm and Prop, which was the company that rented the firearms to the show. Also, he recommended Hannah Gutierrez Reed to Sarah Zachary, the prop master, that young Hannah Gutierrez Reed would be a great armor, a good fit for the show. So he helped get her hired on the show. He provided them the guns and the blanks and the dummies. So it would seem to source there, it seems very likely that's where live cartridges were mixed in with dummy rounds. Nobody in Hollywood could imagine dummy rounds being live. When I talk to other armorers and prop masters, I've talked to people who've been doing this since the 1960s, and it's mind-boggling that someone could mix together live rounds with dummies, because we're very meticulous when it comes to sorting our dummy rounds and our blanks. So I would want to start the investigation back at the source. And I'll make a note, your previous interview, previous thing you talked about, McDougal case, there was a guy who was involved helping with the investigation, but it turns out he's a suspect. Well, Seth Kenney spent a lot of time with the detectives and helping nurture the investigation and direct them where to look and what to do. Wait a second, let's look at this guy. How about that?
Right, Dutch. Dutch, preach. I love what you're saying here, because if he's the one who provided the ammunition, if there were live rounds mixed in with the dummy rounds that he sold to the movie for use, my gosh. I mean, my lawyer brain goes to all of the types of liability that could happen with him here. You are absolutely right. This needs to be a big focus of the investigation. And the investigation, I really wonder about everything with the prosecutors, the way they charged Alec Baldwin and then withdrew their charges when the attorneys pushed back. Then they charge him again. You know, it's kind of like, get it together. Somebody died here. This is really bad. I've got another clip I want to play of Hannah Gutierrez, and here she's talking about loading the gun and how she listens for the sound and didn't hear any that sounded like they would be a live round.
And my protocol really is a lot of checking for barrel obstructions, mostly because that's where a lot of mistakes get made, is like just a blank behind something, and a lot of guns get thrown into, like, dropped in rocks, you know, and rocks get into the barrel and fly out and so my is mostly just checking the barrel and everything, and then making sure the dummies are dummies. Yeah, and I'm not
Kinsey, there have also been allegations of drug and alcohol use with Hannah Gutierrez. It sounds like she's got some other problems. Are these some things that you've been hearing with the reporting that you've done and the research on this one?
Yes, through some of this documentation, we're seeing that the judge is going to allow text messages in, and the text messages do point to drug use, do point to somebody perhaps taking a bag of cocaine to, and they're saying that's getting rid of evidence. Was she hungover the day that this happened? So there are a lot of concerns about, it's not just the inexperience, but it's the irresponsibility of Hannah Gutierrez Reed on the set. That is absolutely something that I think that a judge and a jury is going to take note of. And it is the prosecution doing Alec Baldwin's defense job for him in laying all of this out before his trial, because they're just going to take some of those highlights and throw that back in the prosecution's face when it's Alec's turn.
Right. Kinsey, that's a great point. You wonder why they don't join them, try them together. This all happened as one continuous incident. It wasn't like it was separate. If I was the attorney, I'd want them tried as co-defendants. Thank you for those points. Dutch, the point I want to end on is a good one. After this incident, you have taken your expertise and put it in the form of a guidebook about safety protocols for sets. Tell us a little bit about that. If you have the book, share with us the title and where it can be found, please.
Well, thank you. After the Rust incident, I got together with a lot of fellow armorers all over the country. We'd get on Zoom calls and say, what can we do to help prevent something like this? Again, this is an anomaly. This is not what we do. But we realized there's really no across-the-board standardized training for our craft. So I created a workshop. We do a class here in LA every month, and now I do it in cities across the country. And I created a guidebook so we can help standardize some of the information. So it's prop gun set safety for film and television. It's a simple set of guidelines that we can all follow. It's basically what we all do, but we've finally put it in writing so that we can standardize the languaging and the practices that we do in LA or Atlanta or Chicago or Calgary. Wherever there's filming, we can use the same terminology and know that we're standardizing rattle rounds that have a BB in them instead of the ones with a hole in the side, things like that. So if we can, that's my contribution to the industry, and hopefully we can never have anything like this happen again.
That's right. Boy, that is wonderful. You did that. Dutch Merrick, Kinsey Schofield, always great to have you both on the program. Thank you so much for everything today. We'll see you soon. And when we come back, now that the state is rested, the question is, will Adam Montgomery show up for court?